this medicine is used traditionally to find strategy and solutions. A lot of medicines out there will provide a glimpse of the destination of liberation, which is very important. It's transcendence and many other gifts like forgiveness and self-love. But this, for me, is the ultimate medicine of strategy, whether it is business, whether it is solutions for climate change, for healing our ecology. This is the most potent creativity medicine because of its neuroregenerative effects. This is a solutions medicine. This is a strategy medicine for conscious entrepreneurs, for social change, all of the changes we need in our whole economic system for it to be sustainable. And so come to this medicine, the people who are the change makers, who are the policy makers, who are the scientists. And that's what we really need right now. We desperately need these solutions, and this medicine is on the move right now for a reason.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Psychedelic Conversations. Today with me, Elizabeth Bast. She is the co-founder of SoulCentro Iboga Retreats, and I'm really excited to be having this conversation. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Susan. It's such a privilege to be here with you, sharing.
Thank you for your time. This is also a very special episode for me personally, because I always wanted to speak to someone who directly works with the medicine, Iboga medicine. So that makes it even more special to have you with us.
Thank you. It's such a joy to share about this medicine for so many reasons. Yes.
Yeah, can't wait to dive in. Before we go into the conversation, I'd like to just give a little bit of your background to our listeners so they can connect and have a bit of context of where you are and what you do.
Sure.
So you are in Costa Rica, which I have a few questions around that as well.
Yes.
You are a Missoko Bwiti initiate, which I'd love to know more. Traditionally trained Iboga provider and a co-founder of SoulCentro. Is that how you spell it or pronounce it? SoulCentro.
Yes, perfect.
Iboga Retreats. And you are the author of the award-winning memoir, Heart Medicine, a true love story, one couple's quest for the sacred Iboga medicine and the cure for addiction. Bast is a recipient of a Women of the Psychedelic Renaissance grant from the psychedelic feminist non-profit organization Cosmic Sister, and a member of Cosmic Sisters Expert Advisory Circle. You studied at New College of San Francisco with an emphasis on art and social change, and completed the transformational coach training program for psychedelic integration with Being True to You. That sounds wonderful. And your name is Mbeye? Is that the Bwiti initiation name?
The Bwiti name is pronounced Mbeye.
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 Wow.
Yes. Mbeye, which means river, or the medicine of the river. Or another way to view that is the teachings of the river.
That's so wonderful. So to begin with, I would love to know what brings you to this work, first of all.
Sure. Yes, thank you. Well, one of the worst tragedies of my life brought me to this work. I find that so interesting that sometimes some of the most challenging or painful events of our lives is what brings us to the greatest medicine of our lives. And I was deep in relationship with my partner of 6 years. We had been together, and he had been completely, quite militantly sober when I met him. And then he had a relapse on opioids. He had struggled with addiction much earlier in his life. And he had quite a number of years of sobriety and and recovery before we even met. And so this was devastating. We were in love. And when it first happened, my first thought from my mind was, this is over. This is because I understood the statistics. It didn't look good. And with all of the standard models of care for treatment, the statistics were just abysmal. And even if someone did, quote unquote, recover from opioids, they were likely on a lot of other soul numbing drugs in order just to keep going that were also sometimes just as toxic, like methadone or Suboxone, these other drugs, or a whole cocktail of drugs that people end up on. And in that moment, right after I had that thought, I immediately had a mystical transmission of 3 words in the voice that I now completely recognize as the spirit of Iboga. And those 3 words were pray, wait, and listen. And being a very spiritual person, I was really able to perceive those words. And so I prayed and I waited and I listened and took a walk in nature the next day, which is my church, to pay attention to nature, to listen to the sounds of the animals, to look at the trees and the plants, and in that way clear my mind. And I've learned that in order to really know our direction forward in life, it's very important to have a period of time of not knowing, to clear and open the space, because knowing the direction in a situation like this is not an intellectual kind of knowledge. So as I was walking in nature, I had a very clear message. Iboga. It was out of the blue. It was from the depths of my consciousness. And in that moment, I could not remember where I'd first heard about Iboga or how I knew it was going to be helpful in this situation. It was very unclear. But the word Iboga kept coming to me. It was this very obscure medicine that I barely knew anything about, but it kept coming, Iboga, like it was like a beacon. And so I went home and researched, and sure enough, there was this powerful medicine. In retrospect, I think I read a book that mentioned it maybe a decade prior, and it was filed away in my consciousness. And then I had been doing a lot of work with ayahuasca over a decade and other medicines that allowed me, I see now that all of that other medicine work helped me to be aware and attuned even to the ecosystem in a different way. And so then I did research, and the research was terrifying because there's a lot of adverse events out there when people are holding this medicine that really are not qualified. They're not qualified spiritually. They're not qualified medically. And it's very frightening, the kinds of things that can happen, especially with contraindicated drugs and medications. So it took some time, and I'm glad I know how to practice critical thinking and do good research. So, and my husband, now my husband at the time was very intimidated, and there was even a war going on in him. Of part of him really wanted this, part of him wanted to go down in flames. So it was a difficult time of relapse and continued relapse. And we got there to Costa Rica because we found a traditional provider who worked with proper medical support, and they were in Costa Rica. So this was an indigenous Bwiti person who was a Ganga, or an ordained healer, and with a doctor. And so we went, and as I learned about the medicine, I learned it was very helpful for trauma. And despite years, decades of therapy and meditation and yoga, I'm also a certified yoga teacher, very deep studies in classical yoga, practice, other medicines, I still had enduring PTSD symptoms that were very exhausting to me, and preventing me, I think, from my full potential. And so I went for my own reasons right next to him. I didn't go for him. I went for me. And I still wasn't even sure if we were going to make it past that experience. I just promised myself that I would show up and that I would do my best to support him in showing up. And I didn't know anything after that. And I think that's important, especially in relationships like this, where they can easily fall into codependence, that it's very important for us to do our own work for ourselves. And what I saw, if for the people out there who are listening to this, who have ever loved anyone who has been deep in the depths of addiction cycles, is that it's like a possession where you stop recognizing someone that you love and something else literally enters their body and looks at you through their eyes and speaks at you through their words. And I didn't recognize him at the end. I was fed up. It wasn't the man I knew. And in one night, I still get tears. In one night, I saw him again. The next morning, I saw his soul shining and present, and that thing that had been riding his body was gone. And he also prepared in a very intentional way. He went through withdrawals before he went, even though he was still had that spirit in him. Just because you wean down doesn't mean it's gone. It's just waiting. It's biding its time. But he prepared in a very intentional way for the medicine, did initial cleansing. And in 24 hours, I saw his soul again. It was very present and clear. His face was very clear. His eyes were clear. And he said, I love my life. I never want to disrespect myself again. And that revealed to me really the root of all healing of addiction, to understand what your life is, to understand who you are as a soul, to understand why you're here, and to love it and to want to respect it. So that's what brought us to the medicine. And from there, I just want to acknowledge and honor my now husband for going down this path. He is now an ordained healer of the tradition, has spent just about a decade in service and study through our very well-respected elders that we're with now, and has devoted himself. And it happened that, he is African-American, and we learned later on through DNA testing that this medicine is actually his direct ancestral medicine. And he felt a homecoming. We both felt this remarkable homecoming when I met his ancestors in that second ceremony that we did in the first retreat. And it was so beautiful because it was a welcoming home. And that was incredible. And yes, it was his direct ancestors welcoming him home. That was very healing for him as someone who has survived a lot of racialized trauma. So that's how we got here.
Wow, that's so wonderful and touching. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
So I have this friend that I mention often, also has African roots. And he always says, we're all born with a medicine pouch. It's as unique as your own DNA. Yeah. And as you live this life, like you said, the tragedy brought you to this medicine. And he says, as you live and you face your challenges, your medicine will reveal itself to you. And then you get to carry that in your pouch. Yeah, it's so beautiful. It's reminded me every time I speak to someone who had the calling to coming into this work through their own life experiences, it really touches me because I think it's so wonderful and powerful and profound. The recognition and then using that tragedy or the challenge to be in service to also help those who are in need.
Yes, I love that. And I see that medicine pouch is what's in our Bwiti names that was always there, but then we were able to name it. And it comes in ceremony. My husband's name is Nyangu, which means the medicine of the sun. And that's a very big medicine, right? And it's very interesting because that medicine, it's like a superpower.
Yeah.
Right? Like rivers have a lot of superpowers. They can actually shape rock. There's no such thing as an obstacle to a river. River always moves forward, right? But all of those superpowers of that medicine can also be a liability or a challenge, right? Like the sun can be too hot. The sun can burn too hot. The river can be tumultuous. I love to think of that too with that medicine pouch. That's a beautiful reference, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I love what you said about spending some time in life not knowing. I think we need to speak to this as often as much as possible. I think the Western model of, acquiring wisdom and spirituality and all of that has now been something to desired to happen so quickly, so fast, and we want it overnight. And nobody wants to go through the not knowing stages. And I'm glad you touched on that, because the power of spending some time, which I call it through the psychological framework, I call it the fog. We need to be in that fog for a while and listen. I think that was so powerful what you said.
Thank you so much for saying that. I love that. That's so poetic, the fog. Well, we live in a society, the world descended from the colonial mindset, right? That wants everything now. And the fog, oh, that's so beautiful. We also in this society overvalue the intellect. The intellect is the dominant way of knowing, the privileged way of knowing, and the mainstream, Euro-American centric kind of way of knowing in the world. And in the fog, and you mentioned a very important word. Example, I was in a very deep, full body state of listening. Listening is key. So when we have the noise pollution of our own neuroses or trauma narratives, that's the noise pollution, really also, or ancestral trauma is same thing, then we can't listen. And it's important that we intentionally practice listening, and not just with our mind, but with our whole body and all of our senses, because that's a deep form of intelligence that's connected to the greater whole more than we ever know. So the listening part is what's important to really access the wisdom and knowledge available through that fog or through that not knowing.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I'd love to just touch, as this conversation happening, I love it. There's so many questions I would like to ask, but I wanted to say, and the other thing is the devotion. This is like my latest obsession, the devotion, practicing devotion, because like you said, we want everything so fast, right? So there is no time to practice and commit long enough and wait for for the wisdom to come through. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for saying this too. I was just thinking the other day, this is so in alignment of what was present for me, thinking about every meditation practice I've ever had, every yoga practice I've ever had, every indigenous ceremony I've ever had the privilege of attending since I was 14 years old. All of these things were leading me somewhere that I couldn't see along the way, but it was logging in these hours that were taking me up a mountain to a very beautiful view. Sometimes people forget that, well, I'm meditating for a month. What's happening? And it's really not about, like in yoga, we say practice while releasing attachment to the fruits of our practice. It's about devotion. Devotion to your soul, devotion to life itself, devotion to all of the beauty in the universe. And that leads to patience. patience is required on the spiritual path. And in the Western world, we want everything in a weekend seminar. We want everything in one medicine ceremony. Doesn't work that way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as we open this window, can we talk about some of I'm really passionate about talking about the Western model of Iboga, which now is all over social media, and it's about Iboga for addiction, Iboga for you mentioned as well in your notes, drug detox as medicine for drug detox. Usually it's for addiction mainly that I know of. Please talk to us about Iboga and how it is done traditionally, and who are these Bwiti people, the tribes? Who are they? And if you can educate us on this, it'd be so beautiful.
Thank you so much. I love this question, because if you ask our Bwiti elders, what is Iboga for? They will not say drug detox. It's something the medicine can do with its pinky finger. It's the beginning. It's the beginning. And so we're in this addiction crisis, and it's very, very marketable. We're also in a sick care system instead of a well care system, where we focus on the critical illness instead of helping well people to be more well, to be optimized, to be in the fulfillment of their potential. So very different orientation. So ibogaine is one alkaloid. Ibogaine is what is used in most of these clinics, which are a medical setting or clinical setting with as an adjunct to psychotherapy. Sometimes people come in for other reasons, like trauma or crisis of some kind, generally speaking, and then it's an adjunct to psychotherapy often, or integrative work. And that's a very, very limited use of the medicine. Ibogaine is one alkaloid. Iboga is hundreds of alkaloids that work in a symphony together, creating a very powerful entourage effect. And about 13 of them have been studied to have additional therapeutic benefit. So that's an important distinction. People who have experienced both ibogaine and iboga say that iboga, the total alkaloid natural plant medicine in ceremonial doses, is much deeper and much more powerful. So that's interesting to me too. So the Bwiti, which is an umbrella of multiple traditions, actually, there's the Dusumba Bwiti, which is an older, more feminine branch of the Bwiti. There is the Feng Bwiti, which is a syncretic Christian kind of Bwiti. And then we are a part, and there's more, I'm sure, that we are part of the Missoko Bwiti, and its sister tradition for the women is the Mabundi. So the Bwiti encompasses certain aspects of the tradition that are only for men, certain that are shared in the community, and the Mabundi is the women's tradition. So that's interesting too, that the women have this very empowering, separate shamanic tradition, working with the medicine also, which I have been initiated into. And if you ask our elders, what is this medicine for? So the addiction healing is just the very first layer. It's the first thing that it does to take us to what it's really here to do. And the Bwiti say that we have to be clean to enter the spirit world. And the spirit world is a realm. It's an actual realm that we navigate, where we can connect with, heal, and learn from our ancestors, where we can receive the greatest gems of insight, clarity, purpose, understanding, spiritual discovery, and inspiration. And also the soul connection is a primary function of this medicine and tradition, that we understand who we are as a soul. We can meet our soul. We can communicate with our soul. Another way of saying that would be our higher self, or really, it's the self that is our golden compass in life, that knows exactly what we need for happiness, true happiness, not happiness that's like a mood that comes and goes, but a happiness that is present through all life experiences. and visionary creativity, and also solutions. So this medicine is used traditionally to find strategy and solutions. A lot of medicines out there will provide a glimpse of the destination of liberation, which is very important. It's transcendence. It's and many other gifts like forgiveness and self-love. But this, for me, is the ultimate medicine of strategy, whether it is business, whether it is solutions for climate change, for healing our ecology. This is the most potent creativity medicine because of its neuroregenerative effects. There are studies out there showing reports, anecdotal reports, and a study now with a Stanford researcher looking at its potential to heal traumatic brain injury in veterans. Now, this is really interesting. So if it can heal brain injury, think about what it can do to well people who want to find solutions for our biggest crises as a collective. So I want to put this out there, that this is a solutions medicine. This is a strategy medicine for conscious entrepreneurs, for social change, for all of the changes we need in our whole economic system for it to be sustainable, right? And so come to this medicine, people who are the change makers, who are the policy makers, who are the scientists. I have been blown away as a writer, as a creator, as a teacher with the creativity of this medicine. And that's what we really need right now. We desperately need these solutions. And this medicine is on the move right now for a reason. There's some other fascinating purposes of this medicine that are little known. One is that when you work with this medicine for a long time, it's a very powerful fertility and vitality, like sexual vitality medicine. And why is that? You know, Iboga loves love. Iboga loves love and the creation of life, conscious creation of life. So that's a very interesting side effect that comes over time. It's extremely powerful. Nobody needs Viagra, really. There's also other medicines in the jungle of Africa that are profound, like Mbeye, for that. And the indigenous people also utilize it for things like remote viewing and shamanic prescription and diagnosis, like finding the other medicines, like scanning a person and seeing the other medicines that they need. And they have started to teach us that in Africa. It's remarkable, remarkable. And being able to enter the present moment more fully as counselors, to be better counselors. So that's just a few. And prophecy, but not in the sense of anything's written in stone, because nothing is written in stone. The medicine never takes away our choice, but to see if we stay on a specific trajectory, what lies ahead. So we can check trajectories and make better choices. And a little bit about the Bwiti. So the Missoko Bwiti, they are the second oldest branch of Bwiti. We refer to ourselves as the soldiers of nature. And it's a strong healing tradition. And it's the only one of the Bwiti that has this particular modality. It's a guided journey to take people to communicate with their own soul and to heal their own relationship with their soul, and to do things like life review and connecting with ancestors. Sometimes the medicine will do this spontaneously, but not always. And so this taps into the natural functions of the medicine. And also, I must say that who taught the Bwiti, so the Bwiti encompasses many tribes, but who taught the Bwiti is the Babongo. And the Babongo are also referred to by the derogatory colonial term as pygmies, but they are called the Babongo. They are a very old genetic line. According to science, they are the second oldest genetic line in the world. And it's possible that they have been working with this medicine for just literally eons. So wanted to honor them as well. Thank you.
Wow. Oh my God. So much to learn about Iboga. So for our audience, Iboga is medicine from Africa, the continent. Yes. Because this is really important. As I speak to many people in the psychedelic space and facilitators, you know, they facilitate different medicines. And what really has been powerful to understand as well, each medicine and where they come from and the continent that they grow and they are cultivated, and also, like you said, used as medicine. And the other thing I wanted to come back quickly is, so the Iboga is the whole spectrum of what this medicine is, and then Ibogaine or Ibogaine, or is it Iboga? Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Yes, Iboga, or some people say Iboga, but I hear our community in Africa say Iboga a lot.
Okay, so the Ibogaine then is it from the same plant?
Oh, that's a great question. So sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. And sometimes it's from another plant called Voacanja africana. So it can be sourced from another plant. It's known to be not quite as powerful as Ibogaine sourced from Iboga, but it can be useful, and it's very sustainable, which is important for the medical clinics. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. But in this case, you work with Iboga, the full spectrum plant.
Yes, we work with Iboga in different forms. We work with the root bark shavings. In Africa, we work with the fresh shavings, which is very powerful. Sometimes we work with the tea made into a tea, and we also we work with a total alkaloid extract, which is the whole plant extract that's made in a sacred and very clean, pure way. And that allows Westerners to have a ceremonial dose without the impact on the gut of this loads and loads of this highly fibrous root bark, which is very helpful. And also the taste, it's very difficult for a Westerner to actually keep it down, that much root bark taste after they have that taste in their mouth. It's the most bitter plant ever on the planet, I think.
I understand. Okay, thanks for sharing. So I watched Hamilton Morris clip of when he joined a ceremony traditionally. So it was very intense, very intense. So if you could speak to maybe how, is there any differences in the way that this medicine is facilitated and served for Western people as opposed to the indigenous people? How, the differences, maybe how they use it, how they serve it. Is there a different framework for the Westerners and then as opposed to indigenous people themselves?
That's an interesting question. Well, here at SoulCentro, we're very, very traditional. We're very traditional. What we don't have that they do have in Africa is a whole temple full of people who know the dances and the songs and the drumming. And there's a live music. We play the recorded music and know some of the songs as well. But that presence of the community is really beautiful. But other than that, our ceremonies are just the same. These are healing ceremonies. There's also different kinds of ceremonies. There's a welcome ceremony where people have a light of man of medicine when someone's coming to a village, a guest. There's healing ceremonies. So we offer healing ceremonies where it's very common for people to lay down and heal. And even that is different from an initiation ceremony. Initiation ceremony is a different ritual of deepening in the relationship to Iboga and spiritual discovery that is in Africa. We go annually. We lead journeys every year in the summertime at the best time of year to avoid most of the bugs, and that's available to our guests who have already been here, and that at request of our elders, because it's very helpful to actually have a relationship with this powerful medicine before you start to have a relationship with this powerful tradition that's way out in the bush in the middle of nowhere in Africa. It can be a lot to digest all at once. So we found it's very helpful, and also a chance to screen people, to prepare them for Africa, to get better acquainted, to make sure also going through some decolonizing education before they go to Africa to meet our elders. So they're better prepared. The experience, so it's, there's a little bit of a difference too. Ibogaine tends to be a shorter experience, like from what I've heard, 12 hours or so, maybe 24, depending on what's happening. And unfortunately, a lot of times in the Ibogaine field, it's very common protocol to serve people a bunch of other medications after to help them ground, like benzodiazepines or Seroquel. And we feel that that's not helpful and not necessary with a proper detox. Sometimes people are under-medicated with Ibogaine, and so then they're over-medicated with other things to kind of get them out the door. And if anyone out there is thinking about going to Ibogaine, ask about their medication protocols. And if you don't want to be on any other medications coming out, it's important to advocate for yourself in that beforehand. Yes, so the experience with the total alkaloid medicine, it's a 72-hour experience. Occasionally, I've seen people laid out for 4 days. I would say the first 36 to 48 hours, it's a very strong experience. And it starts with like 12 hours in ceremony space, and then we walk people to their rooms, which are right nearby, and we continue to check on them very frequently or sometimes continuously throughout the whole next day and night. And then there's a grounding on the third day, usually. So it's a very deep experience, very long experience.
Is it painful for the person participating? Is it intense? How does
it's very
it feel?
intense. Yeah, often it depends on the person. It depends on what they're coming in with. It depends on their relationship to their own mind. I've seen, it's very interesting. Iboga is known to be so intense. It can be so intense because it will touch all of the nerves of unresolved trauma that we have. It will bring to the surface all of our neuroses in our mind. And when I say neuroses, I mean patterns and way of framing things that are actually not 100% grounded in truth, right? And that can be trauma patterns. That can be a trauma residue from our life or our ancestors. And it must come up to come out. Especially when it comes to psychic material, we cannot let something go until we know what we're letting go of, until we've fully seen it and fully studied it and had a deep reckoning. Sometimes people will have a deep reckoning with things they've done in their life, with guilt or with shame that can come up. And there can be like the purging is the strongest of any medicine on the planet, where all of these neuroses and traumas, they're connected to toxicity in the body. We may have a toxicity from substances, but also from thought patterns, because with our thoughts, we can actually generate stress hormones and saturate ourselves in stress hormones over decades even. So it's pulling all of that out. The nausea can be powerful. The purging can be powerful. So in those ways, it's intense. I wouldn't say painful unless someone has a very, very clogged gut. And that's something we walk people through is cleansing in advance so they don't come in constipated. So that's very important. But I've also seen people come in and go into the deepest, wildest bliss of their life. There was one woman who came in, and this was a great honor for us. Her father, so she was an American woman, and a direct parent was Gabonese descent. So this was very meaningful for her to come in. And it was such a beautiful honor for her to hold space for her. It was an honor for us to hold space for her as she met her ancestors and was welcomed home, and she went into bliss. Absolute, complete bliss. And it was very clear, but also because of her relationship she had cultivated with her mind. And years, right, of these things can matter when people come in cultivated and grounded in self-love, cultivated and grounded in facing the truth. That can be helpful. And also the number one thing that we see in the most beautiful outcomes, and all the outcomes are important and meaningful, but the most beautiful outcomes is that people come in with a sense of gratitude for the experience before they even get here. that they understand that it's a privilege, and they come in with reverence in their heart and respect for Indigenous ways of knowing, for the ceremony space, and they have the most beautiful experiences.
That's so wonderful. I'm so glad you talked about the person's relationship with their mind. So the way that I always understood it, because, we have a community of people would like to be well informed, in using any psychedelic medicines. And one of the things that I get asked all the time is, which medicine is the most strongest? Which would be the highest? What would be the highest hero doses in grams, in sort of measurements? And I'm always thinking, the way that I understand is that it is not so much about the medicine. Of course, there are mechanisms of actions and can determine different kind of intensities, but I always understood that it's about the container being you. And it's always about the container. And I love that you said it. It's the relationship with the mind. And I absolutely agree. So the medicine is communing with this container that we hold. And depending where we are on our evolutionary journey, spiritual journey, the groundwork that we have done, all of these are, we count, it counts to the experience. And like you said, so the intensity then varies. It doesn't matter how much, it's not about how much medicine or which medicine. It's more about the person coming into the space. And now you said we've also respect and reverence.
Gratitude, and gratitude for life. Gratitude in general. Some people live in gratitude, and gratitude you really can't teach anybody. It's something that happens with time. And yes, I love that you brought that up. So dosing, especially as we have learned it in the traditional way, is very nuanced, especially because organic material can vary. We have to be very attuned to what's happening with the individual. And some people who come in who have the most powerful experiences actually need very, very little medicine. Right? It's not about the amount. It's not about like, oh, I did however many grams. Some people get into that as like some kind of gold medal or something. But actually, some people who have the most powerful experiences have had the least medicine. And some people need a lot of medicine to break through the fortress of their mind or break through all of the pollution in their body. And how close of attention are they paying to the experience? Right? How much are they honoring the experience within themselves as they have it? These are huge factors that can affect someone's experience. And while it's always intense, it can be more difficult or more challenging at times, for different people.
Yeah, fully understand that. And what would you say about the contraindications at this point? Because I know the Westerners carry so much, but so many, pharmaceutical drugs they use, and like there's lots of consumerism going on, the processed foods, the alcohol, all of this stuff. So is there a danger in exploring Iboga for the Westerners?
Thank you for bringing that up, which brings me, to this point I always love to cover, which is safety, medical safety. So there are many contraindications, and more contraindications to Iboga than Ibogaine. It depends on the safety standards of the provider too, right? Some people will take clients, some Ibogaine providers will take clients on benzodiazepines, and it's more dangerous. There's more risk, but they will do it, especially if they know how to resuscitate somebody from a grand mal seizure, and it doesn't have to be that. People can choose to wean down on their benzodiazepines first. And by the way, so weaning of certain substances, like for example, to both Ibogaine and Iboga, psychiatric medications for the most part are contraindicated. SSRIs, SNRIs, antipsychotics, mood stabilizers, like many different medications are contraindicated. Also, a lot of common medications like antiemetics, like when you're nauseous and you want to take something, certain kind of painkiller blends, right? Ibuprofen is not okay. And we go over all of these with our guests well in advance through preparatory materials and screening and everything. And even opioids themselves, it has to be like the right window. If someone takes opioids right after that they've had ibogaine or iboga, that's deadly. Or other kinds of like stimulants really should be weaned down a couple of weeks in advance because of what's happening to the heart. And the hard part nowadays is that fentanyl is in everything. Fentanyl is in pharmaceutical drugs coming out of countries like Mexico that you wouldn't even imagine. Fentanyl is in something. It's being inserted into all the street drugs, into acid and MDMA and many, many, many substances. And that is very contraindicated, very dangerous. And it can also take a toll on the heart. When people, like we do a 12-lead EKG in advance to check their heart. And we do another EKG right here when they're on site, right before ceremony, as well as checking their blood pressure again. And we do a full panel of blood work to see what's going on with their kidneys and the liver. That's really important, that have a certain state of wellness and function in the kidneys and liver to do this, to experience this medicine. But what a lot of people don't realize is that there's a whole laundry list of natural herbs and supplements that are contraindicated to iboga and ibogaine. And so microdosing is popular, and who knows where they're getting it. And they might find themselves in an adverse event, especially as the noribogaine or the metabolites build up in their system over time and can cause an event. Or if they have a little cardiac issue that they didn't know about, which is actually more common than you might imagine, that people could have a little cardiac thing that is contraindicated and they don't know. And then they start, I'll just have a little, I'll just microdose. And then as it builds up in their system over time, they could have an adverse event. So it's very important to have the proper medical screening, especially in this side of the world, because we see a lot of drug histories or medication scenarios or medical scenarios that they don't have in Africa, that they don't see over there. So it's really important to be screened and to know, to be informed about what's contraindicated. It's more than I could even name right here. There's a lot out there. Kratom, right? A lot of people are trying to wean themselves down from opioids with kratom or kratom, it could be called. And that's highly contraindicated because of how it affects the heart. People might live through it and people might read about it on a forum. It is very, very, very dangerous. So one thing we do to help people, because we choose not to do acute detox, for us as traditional providers, it's not the best use of the medicine. Much respect to the ibogaine centers that are helping people in acute detox, especially the ones that are doing it well with the proper preparation and the proper integration, like good aftercare resources or education. That's really key. But acute detox can actually be dangerous. And I will tell you why. Because the addiction is there for a reason. The addiction is there to numb a pain, right? And people come in for acute detox, they rip off the Band-Aid, they rip away the crutch of this addiction that has helped them through an emotional pain or a trauma or a physical issue even, and they might be free of their addiction, but they have no coping skills, they have no aftercare, they have no skill sets to navigate life. And then they have a trigger after a while. They might feel really great at first. Oh, I'm fine. And then they hit a trigger and they use again. And guess what? Their tolerance has dropped to zero and they overdose and die. So it's extremely important that when people go to ibogaine, they have the proper preparation and integration, that they have a lot of support. They might even need to change where they live or the friends that they're hanging out with if they're toxic. And so how we work, also because we like to focus on really the spiritual aspects of this work and not cleaning up the pollution, is we help people with what's called preliminary detox. And this can involve creating a customized coaching program for someone to wean down, that's also working with their medical professional, their healthcare provider, with supervision and responsible, safe titration, and modalities like combo medicine. Wow, that helps tremendously if you have a skilled combo provider, an advanced provider who understands how to help people through titration from benzodiazepines, sleeping pills, psychiatric medications, antidepressants, right? They can, at the right time, also microdosing, also NAD plus IV nutrient therapy, or BR NAD IV nutrient therapy. There's certain modalities, and we source with coaches who know about all these modalities too, so that when people come in, they can go way deeper than they would have to find way more benefits and all of the gems and insights and direction and soul healing that they wouldn't have had if they're just cleaning up the pollution. The medicine will be busy cleaning up the pollution, and sure, they might get a few insights, but nothing compared to what's possible when they come in clean. It's so much richer and more beautiful, because it's not getting sober that keeps people sober. It's actually going way beyond that into our soul-aligned visionary creativity and purpose. That's what keeps people sober. So that's how we like to work with the medicine.
That's very powerful indeed. So at SoulCentro, your retreat in Costa Rica,
yes,
I'm just blown away with the preparation and safety precautions that you have. This is wonderful. And this is the kind of conversations we need to spread more and more, because right now in the West, a lot of people are in desperate seeking for some kind of relief. So they will just buy Ibogaine online, and they will just they'll just go for it. It's just doing things out of desperation is on the rise right now. So I'm really happy that you spoke to all of the harm reduction and safety and the best practices, especially the preparation process. So in your retreat, how long do they stay? And if somebody wanted to participate, what would be the framework? What could you tell us? What's the whole procedure?
Sure. Yes. And thank you. And before that, I just wanted to respond to what you mentioned about buying it online, just real briefly. So what we've learned is that there's a lot of scary variables when people are trying to buy medicine online. One of them is that it's not sustainable or not potent enough to even do a detox. And there's a strong correlation with online medicine and elephant poachers, because elephants eat iboga. And so the poachers will follow the elephant trails and rip the iboga out in an unsustainable way. Elephants are very precious creatures, and they also go on long pilgrimages to visit and fondle the bones of their ancestors. Isn't that an interesting correlation? Because they eat this ancestral medicine. So we don't want to support elephant poachers. And there's been, we know scientists who have studied some of this medicine that's been sourced online, and it's been adulterated with a deadly cardiotoxic plant, a different plant that looks similar, to make money. I've also heard about directly from people who have suffered being scammed, spending thousands of dollars trying to get medicine and sending more money, and it's a scam and they never send it. So there's a lot of problems with online medicine sourcing. It's even been adulterated with fentanyl, we've heard of. So it's, medicine loves relationships, and the medicine sourcing should be sacred, it should be sustainable, and it should be through relationships. We feel it's part of our ethics. So our retreats, when people come, we always do 2 ceremonies, which is different than a lot of ibogaine. Most ibogaine will be 1 treatment. It's just the first layer. That's why it has such a crazy reputation, because it's just the most brutal part of the process is the detox, right? It's just the beginning. And really, like, Iboga is the greatest medicine for me, I've found, of peace and bliss. But it has to remove everything that's in the way of that first. And that's not pleasant. So we always have 2 ceremonies, and occasionally, a few times a year, we offer a 3 ceremony option for people who have really intense trauma, or they're in a deep recovery process. And that has been very necessary for some people. So generally 8 days and the 2 ceremonies. And we also, so first day people arrive and we offer orientation to help people get acquainted with the space and the Bwiti framework, and serve people coconuts, and they have beautiful food, beautiful organic, locally sourced food from really world-class chefs. It's all gluten-free, sugar-free, cow dairy-free. And we pay special attention to people's dietary needs. So do our best to help people feel really at home. And then the second day is the first ceremony. So people have time to unwind from their travels. Is important, not to just fly in and go into ceremony. That's too much, in our opinion. So the next day, and there's counseling all day the next day before ceremony. There's many hours of one-on-one counseling available to help people with their questions. People develop their questions for their life, which is one of the traditional functions of the medicine that ties into the origin story, that we present questions that are very meaningful to us. So we go over questions, and then we have a medicine navigation talk to help people understand how to navigate the ceremony in terms of practical safety tips, but also the medicine experience itself. And then the whole next day is discovery day, day 3, where people are still very deep in the medicine, and we provide counseling, and we bring coconut water and broth and fruit. People usually don't have an appetite for a while. And usually people can make it out by dinner time, usually. And then the 4th day is our spiritual shower day, where we serve a microdose of the medicine during the day, which is really special. And we create these blessed bundles of sacred herbs and plants and really magic then we bathe people in water with those bundles to help wash away the past, and also to help bring in the blessings that they're calling in. It's a beautiful traditional ritual. And then the next day is our second ceremony, day 5. Next day after that is discovery day, so still being with the medicine, deep in the medicine. The next day after that is an integration day. And then the 8th day, we take the morning to do some integrative activities, and then they leave. There's also art therapy on site on that day 4, which is really lovely. So it's very creative. It's very attentive. There's always someone available 24/7. Sometimes people have things they're going through at 3 a.m. and we're always available. There's always, sometimes we have students here. We have a beautiful school. So there's beautiful students that are here to support often as well.
That's so wonderful. Wow. Thank you so much. What a beautiful offering, and doing it in the right way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say on the topic of the reciprocity? Because this is so big, and and the relationship, like we can tie in, if you like, the relationship with the medicine, and with the indigenous traditions, right?
Yes, I love this question. This is our beating heart here. Reciprocity is so sacred because it is the way of nature. The giving and receiving is the way of nature, and the way that we are meant to live with nature if we are going to have a sustainable human future. Period. We got to get this one, because it's not infinite growth, of the current economy. That's not how we're going to be sustainable. It's through reciprocity. It's through giving and receiving of the gifts that we have to the other. And reciprocity, so people think of reciprocity as like maybe writing a check. Here you go. Here's some reciprocity. No, reciprocity is, so for us, we have these reciprocity projects with our community. They're for a community more than individuals. They're for a community, and we are in dynamic collaboration with our community, where we're in dialogue about what we can share that's helpful to the community. And it's not like, oh, here's a bunch of money to one person, thus creating an artificial power dynamic that wasn't there before. It's what's good for the community. Things like we've built an international school and a dorm, new homes for our teachers, and solar we're putting in. building a well right now for the community, getting electricity in as per their request. Sometimes it's things like eyeglasses or surgery or a cell phone for somebody, because, we want them too, all of those things. So it's depending on what's needed, what's useful, and we talk about it. It's from relationship. And it's also not like, we have to be careful of the white saviorism approach to interacting with Indigenous communities, which is harmful, that we can, after 2 weeks there, we can assess what that village needs. We'll come in and save them and, introduce things that aren't necessarily appropriate. So it takes a deep relationship to be able to skillfully come into dialogue about what's helpful and learn just as much as we give. That's very important, to be humble. Western ways of knowing can be very arrogant, can be very much an assumption of authority and supremacy, and it can be unconscious. So we have to be very careful that we are actually coming in a humble way, that we are learning as much as we're sharing, always. So that's what we feel about reciprocity with our community there. And we welcome support. We love it. Some of our guests come through our program, and after they integrate, they want to become involved in these projects, and we love that. We love our community to be happy and well and cared for and feeling valued and honored and giving back to the medicine itself. So this is the question that we ask on every integration circle. Oh, that's the other thing we have in our retreats. We have 2 integration circles on site, where we talk about where everybody's at. And we ask this question: how can we give back when we have received a priceless gift? Because people can pay for a retreat, but they can never pay for the medicine. There's no value, there's no price tag that could ever be on this medicine or this tradition. So how do we begin to give back? And that is by paying attention, especially afterward. And not getting into this, what you might see in the medicine world, right, Susan, is the insatiable seekers syndrome, where they're getting more medicine, and never stopping to really integrate and listen and pay enough attention to the medicine they've received. We don't need more and more medicine to feel good. We need to give more and more attention to the medicine we've had and become our answers, practice our answers. And that's the most beautiful way to give back to the medicine, in addition to donating to proper sustainability projects. And we have our access to sustainable medicine, and we welcome for people to give directly to this organization called Blessings of the Forest, which is the premier vetted, responsible, legitimate medicine sustainability project in Gabon right now. It's Blessings of the Forest. Anyone out there, give them a bunch of money, please. They're doing great work, and they're really coming through on their word. And so that's another way to give back to the medicine.
That's wonderful. And it's the key for the sustainability, right? Because right now, thanks to the mainstream media, psychedelics are coming really strong. And of course, as you said, that the term I use for them, and this is an inside joke as well among our friends over here with the, psychedelic medicine spaces, we call them the psychedelic shoppers. Psychedelic shoppers. So, you keep shopping for psychedelics, different ones, and you always look for more. So I really understand that. It's very prevalent here as well. It's just insane.
More. Yeah, not, we don't need more and more. That's not the point. That's actually, it's not the point. Wasteful.
Yeah. I guess because of the, environment, and because of the, the setup, the society in most, Western cities, hustle and bustle, everyone's having 9-to-5s, and they take, 2 weeks in a year, and they just want to make the most of it. So in that 2 weeks or a week, they want to try every single medicine. And there are retreats providing them. There are retreats providing like 5 different medicines within like 7 days or something like that.
That is not wise. And I will tell you why. That is not wise. These are big spirits that need breathing room, that need space to work. Iboga itself will work on people for 6 months to a year, deeply, and doing nuanced neurological healing and growth. And so, for example, someone goes in for a brain surgery, right? Like I like to compare Iboga to the brain surgeon of medicines, even though it's for everything. It's for the heart, the soul, the body, everything. But you go in for a brain surgery. Is it helpful to try and have physical therapy and acupuncture and aromatherapy and a manicure and pedicure and a tarot reading at the same time? No. Like, we need to take time to let that expert work on us, and then let those stitches heal, and spend time healing and letting that experience settle. We are very much in strong disagreement with that kind of approach of the use of medicine. It is not respectful. And they might not know they're not being respectful, but in the Indigenous perspective, that is very disrespectful.
Yeah. Yeah. Could you say some, more on that, the way the Indigenous, because, my understanding is we need to develop a relationship with the medicine we seek. We need, again, the devotion, the word devotion. We need to commit to the work that we are undertaking. And this is not a short-term, the consumerism mind, the mindset is everywhere. This is not about getting something and then landing on your dream life overnight. This is not that, right? So the relationship piece is the biggest piece. And I'm always like, how could you change? You've spent all of your life investing every ounce of your energy not to heal, the unconsciously.
I love this point. Thank you for bringing this up. And this is something I'm about to write about too, is, this is the mindset of the Western world, is the customer mindset, the consumer mindset. I want this experience. I want the results. I want it now. I want to remain comfortable while this happens. And I want my money's worth, right? For something priceless, right? Yeah. So there's a big difference. There's these two orientations. One is the customer. One is the student. The consumer versus the devotee, and the colonist versus the relative. So that's the customer, consumer, colonist versus the student, devotee, relative. And these are very different orientations to the medicine, where we are in relationship with the medicine. We are in dialogue with the medicine. We're listening to the medicine. We're giving back to the medicine through our attention over time. And even with the most powerful medicine in the world for neuroplasticity and neurogenesis, Iboga, you still have to practice. And that's the point. The medicine doesn't do the work for us. It's not flipping a switch. You have to practice because the medicine wants us to have that maturation of consciousness. We're not going to be happy robots. We need to make choices. We need to practice. And that is how we mature our consciousness, to build our own muscles and become medicine. Not to rely on medicine like a crutch again. That's addiction mindset thinking, right? But to be in relationship with the medicine and practice. And it's a beautiful practice. Change is hard, even with the most powerful medicine in the world, period. And if people come in to this medicine with a different mindset, it's going to be a great disappointment.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a lot of help. It's a lot of help for all of our intentions, but we need to put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that process. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a long-term relationship rather than what can I get in one ceremony. Yeah.
And it's a long-term relationship with ourselves. People forget that they're having a relationship with themselves, with every thought, with every action. And we feel that. We need to listen to ourselves.
Yeah. Recently, I listened to this podcast. It was so beautiful. It was about, so the host was talking about the individualization in the Western model, where it's all about individual wanting to do this whole thing, like, I need to heal, I need to be successful, I need to be, there's all these desires and needs as an individual. And one of the things I loved, he said, is that in this medicine work, or at least as a human living in this planet Earth, we need to move away from that now and come together in ritual, rather than just me, and my journey, my healing, my trauma, my stuff. It was so powerful. I think this is also kind of dampening the way that we come into the medicine work in the West, I think.
Yes, thank you for bringing this up as well. I see that it is important to start with our own healing, but the Western consumer model isn't looking beyond that. It's still very individualist. And in the Bwiti, we say that, before you can save the world, save yourself. So many people try to jump ahead there too. That start with your own healing, but remember the bigger picture, which is the truth, is that we are all connected. We are all connected in this ecosystem, spiritually, physically, and the healing of one is related to the healing of all. And the healing of all is related to the healing of one also. And remember that we are there not just to, in the consumer model, take medicine, in the reciprocity, to receive medicine and to give back, but then to become medicine for others. And that part is not being seen.
Yeah.
Enough.
Yeah.
That's when things really come full circle.
Yeah.
When people get to a place when they are truly ready from that full, grounded, healed place to give back, then that is the most profound kind of healing.
Yeah, absolutely agree. This is wonderful, Elizabeth. As we're coming to the end of our conversation, I could keep you here for another hour or two easily. I'm sure we'll have you back sometime soon. Hope to have you back again. Because we also love to build relationship with our guests, so we can continually come back, if not annually, just kind of catch up and then talk more deeper layers of the processes. So as we...
that would be beautiful.
Yeah, I would love to have you back. And of course, in the meantime, before we let you go, what would you like to say? Is there anything that's burning that you want to share and say? And also like your projects, anything that you're working on right now, your offers, anything that comes to mind, please share with us.
Thank you so much, Susan. So you can find out about our work at SoulCentro.com. Again, that's SoulCentro.com. And we have a new website launching any day, probably this week, loaded with educational videos and content. We're very excited to be putting that out there. And we're located here in Costa Rica. And we have a future vision. We have land that we're developing where we will build an on-site, state-of-the-art preliminary detox center that will have so much available of all the things that I mentioned to help people prepare. And then they don't have to go anywhere. They can just stay there, and then long-term integration as well, and an art space with artist residency. There's some beautiful plans there for that space. So stay tuned to the future. We welcome people who would like to be involved in reciprocity projects. And what I would just like to share to anyone listening right now is that you have a treasure inside of you that has never been seen before and will never be seen again, that is absolutely vital to our collective healing and growth. And really, beyond healing and growth is our complete synergy with nature as a collective of human beings. So your gifts are absolutely needed, and listen to yourself, trust yourself, honor yourself. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Elizabeth. It's been an honor to have you here, and your energy and your wisdom. And thank you for all the work that you're doing in this world. Appreciating you.
My joy, my pleasure, my honor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Hope you guys enjoy this conversation. Please do get in touch. Drop a comment, say hello, share your experiences. Don't be shy. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.
Thank you so much for joining us. Psychedelic Conversations podcast is designed to educate, inform, and expand awareness. For more information, please head over to psychedelicconversations.com. You can also share with your friends or leave a review so that we can reach more people. You can also join us in our private Facebook group to keep the conversation going. This show is for information purposes only, and it is not intended to provide mental health or medical advice. Thanks for listening.